Welcome back from our break. You are watching Fiscally Fit. This program is aimed as an outreach to engage youth, young adults, and their parents in a conversation about money management. For the second half of our show, we have Tommy Ben, who's a licensed financial specialist, and he will be talking to us about how we can charge it right, the characteristics of a credit card, the pros and the cons of a credit card. So, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, I know people are anxious to know about credit cards because a lot of us really don't know what we're getting ourselves into when we, want to apply for a credit card, or maybe we already have one and we need to know how to best manage that credit card. So my first question is, what are characteristics of a credit card?
Okay, well, very good question. There's several different characteristics of credit cards. Main, points of what a credit card is a revolving line of credit where you charge a certain percentage of interest. Generally, it's either a fixed or a variable interest rate, and it's based off of the prime interest rate.
Okay. Now, is there a difference between a credit card and a charge card? Because I hear a lot of companies that say, okay, well, this is a charge card, and then other companies, well, we have credit cards. What's the difference?
That's another very good question, because a lot of people don't realize there is a difference between a charge card and a regular credit card. Basically, a charge card, you have to pay off that balance by the end of the month. For example, the majority of American Express cards, at the end of the month, you have to pay back the full balance. A credit card, you have to pay back a percentage of that balance at the end of the month. You can pay back the balance in full, or you can pay back the minimum payment, is what it's called.
Okay, so are there situations where it's probably best to get a credit card versus a charge card?
Usually, when it comes down to it, the charge card has a little more of a difficult or a harder process to get approved for versus a regular credit card. So generally, most people will start off with a regular credit card and then afterwards move and have both a credit card and a charge card.
Okay. So let's say, for instance, because I've heard so much talk about how credit cards can help you establish credit as far as a credit history. Is that true? Because I know there are probably some people wondering, hey, I don't have a credit card. I've never opened up a credit card account. But at the same time, I don't have a credit history. Will that help me begin that credit history?
It definitely will help you. There are people that have excellent credit that don't even have credit cards. But it's better for you to have a credit card in the sense, if you know how to control it, it gives you a good opportunity to leverage your money. For example, if you have a credit card and it's giving you reward points and you travel frequently, let's say to New York, and it's a rewards card, gives you an opportunity where you could be just paying your regular monthly payments using your credit card, and you build up miles that you can use for travel, which would save you money in the sense of instead of you spending $250 on a plane ticket from here to New York, you would just use the miles that you've accumulated just from doing your normal spending.
Okay. Yeah, I can definitely speak on that, because I remember when I first graduated from high school, I was going off to college at age 18. I remember something that was important to me was establishing credit. So I went to my local bank, opened up a bank account, and then they had that credit card attached to it. So I know about the benefits, but what about the cons to owning a credit card?
The cons to owning a credit card, or I think a lot of people get into credit cards just because they see that everyone else has a credit card, and don't really look at the full evaluation of what's the best credit card opportunity for them. It's good you have to look and see as far as what the interest rate is. Is it a variable interest rate? Is it a fixed interest rate? Are there reward points? Is there an annual fee? And if there is an annual fee, do the rewards that come with that card, are they beneficial enough for you to be paying that annual fee?
Okay. Now, what are some factors when someone is making that first application, they're filling out that application for that credit card? What are some factors to look for in a credit card? Whether it's the interest rate, like you stated, or whether it's, other factors that you should be careful when looking at, let's say, a Macy's card versus a Visa or a MasterCard or an American Express?
When it comes down to that comparison, when you apply for a store card, the process also is usually easier to get approved for that. But generally, the interest rates when you get a store card are going to be higher than if you're applying for a regular Visa. A lot of times you'll see for different stores, you're going to see a promotion where they give you 10% off of your purchase today, which a lot of people look at that and like, oh, wow, it's going to give me a big benefit.
We hear that a lot.
Yeah. But if you leave that balance and you just let that balance sit and you're just paying your minimum payment, you're actually going to end up paying more than what you would have gotten that discount for. So that's something to take into consideration when you look at it. Usually when you're first starting off with a credit card, you want something that has a comparable interest rate, and probably not something that has an annual fee to start off with.
So is it best then to start off possibly then with a department store versus with a card like a regular Visa or a MasterCard?
I would say to start off with the Visa or the MasterCard. That's the better option for you, just because even though it's a little more difficult, it would be better for you in the sense that you're probably going to save money in the long run.
Okay.
And it's with the charge cards or the store cards, people generally get into more trouble with a store card versus with a regular credit card.
Okay, which leads to my next point, paying that bill.
Paying the bill.
Because you always hear people always say pay more than the minimum.
Definitely.
What is the talk about paying the minimum? Is that recommended or should you pay a little bit more? And if so, how much more would you say would be a good, how can I say, not necessarily formal, but a good estimate to go off of?
What I always suggest to people and what I do myself is I have my minimum payment linked to my checking account. So worst case scenario, I never will pay late. Worst case scenario, it's automatically going to take the minimum balance from my account. And if I make a purchase, I try to put towards it as much as I can. If it's a $100 purchase that I made, I try to put at least $50 towards it. And if you have a credit card that has a limit of $10,000, you don't want to go over $5,000 on that card because it doesn't look as favorable on your credit report. It looks like kind of a way like you're overspending.
Okay.
And you can also look at it in the sense of making sure you always pay on time and you pay more frequently because it'll give you opportunity in the future when you apply for other things that will get approved for higher limits. It's just like if I borrowed money from you today, I borrowed $100 from you and I came back with you tomorrow and brought you that same $100, and a week from now I asked you to borrow $100 again, there's a good chance you probably would lend me that money. But if I borrowed $100 and I paid you $10 every single month, there's less of a chance of you lending me $100 again.
Okay. Now, I always hear that it's not good to have too many credit card accounts open.
Definitely.
Is there, not necessarily a formula, but is there almost like a rule of thumb of, how many accounts you should have open? Because I know that has an impact on your credit history or your credit report. So what would you say is a good rule of thumb as far as the number of credit card accounts you should open or should have open?
A good rule of thumb is, first off, you have to be very disciplined. You have to evaluate your own personal finances. And I suggest not to have more than 2 cards, one that you use actively and one in case of emergencies, because anything can happen. So.
Okay. Now, is there then a concern if for some reason, let's say I did have 5 credit cards open, and I decided, I don't need all 5. I'm going to close them all down. I'm going to close the accounts. Does that impact my credit in any way when I just start closing accounts?
That could definitely impact your credit. I wouldn't suggest, if you've already have those cards open, I would look into it before you close all of them at the same time. I would check and see as far as which are benefits and what are the pros and cons, and use the one that has the most benefits to it. And the other ones, keep them at a 0 balance and keep them just in case of emergency, because you already have those open. If you close those trade lines, it could potentially affect your credit. So if they're already open, leave them as it is, unless it has an annual fee attached to it or it's more of a disadvantage to you.
Okay, so does it matter how long you leave a credit card account open? Like I've heard situations like, let's say I just went to Macy's and I just opened up an account, and then, I did use that 10%, discount, but then I decide, what, I'm gonna close it in 3 months, or versus closing it a year later. How does that look, when you consider credit and your history? Is that advised, or?
It's advised to actually hold it for longer, just because it's a trade line. When they go to evaluate your credit, it looks better they see that you've had a longer history than a shorter history. So if you've had the credit card for a short period of time and you close it 3 months later, they're going to look at, all right, well, they only had it for 3 months, versus if you had it for a year, they're going to look at it and say, okay, this person's had this for a year, they've always paid on time, this is something we can work with.
So it's all about establishing that history.
Exactly.
With that company, with that lender.
Exactly.
Okay, now what about, we know that in these hard times there are many layoffs happening, and we know that there are people that are getting into those situations where they can't pay off their credit cards, not even the minimum. What happens when I get to the point where I can no longer pay that bill? I can no longer pay off that credit card. What should I do?
Well, unfortunately, that is happening to a lot of people in the current economy that we're in. One thing that you can do off the bat is once you get approved for a credit card, majority of credit card companies will offer you some type of a credit protection insurance, where it represents a percentage of what you pay towards your minimum payment or the interest that you pay. And what that does is if you lose your job, it gives you the opportunity for 12 months that they'll pay the minimum payment, so you automatically will at least have that taken care of for you. So those are things to look into in the process of applying for a card. If you've already gotten to that situation, what you should do is contact your credit card company, explain to them the situation that's occurring to you, and see what suggestions they have. You know, because in the end, they would rather try to keep you as a client if it's at all possible.
Okay.
So.
Thank you so much, Tommy. I really appreciate you being a Thanks, Tommy, for being a guest on our show. We really appreciate having you here and talking to us about, about credit cards and different characteristics. Now, for those out there, if you have any comments or suggestions, we would love to hear from you. So feel free to email us at ehw.info@gmail.com. Once again, that is ehw.info@gmail.com. And for those that would like to contact you directly, Tommy, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Best way for them to reach me would be via my phone, 305-789-3971. Again, 305-789-3971.
All right, well, we thank you all for watching our show today. Thanks for tuning on to Fiscally Fit. Stay tuned for next week's show, which we will be talking about banking services. Until then, have a great evening.